Welcome to another HMC HealthWorks podcast. I'm Megan Stikowski, and joining me today is Abraham Jin. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. You are a Giant Liaison, and we are going to be working on a three-part series called Becoming a Leader Worth Following.
Yeah. I'm excited to actually be here today and talk about self-awareness and how that can really impact our leadership.
Mm-hmm. And Aram, you're the CEO of Jin Consulting, and I understand that you specialize in guiding individuals on really charting their own growth and self-awareness and using that self-awareness continuously to improve their home and their work life.
Yeah, it's something that I really have a passion for. We really focus on three areas. One is in helping strategic planning. The other one is really in activation of people and their systems, talent optimization, development. The third one is really more in marketing and really helping to amplify their voice.
Well, I'm really excited to tap into your skill set today. And our first topic is knowing yourself to lead yourself. So we'll take a deep dive into that and really all about leadership. And we're not just talking about people whose titles are CEO or leaders of their businesses, but it's all about how leadership is more of an action or an example, and how knowing yourself is really the foundation to being able to lead yourself. So what is the best way to start getting to know ourselves?
Now, I think the best way is to kind of visualize it first. The sign, the visual representation that we actually use is an infinity loop. And in that first little loop of that circle, what we find is that we put the know yourself, and the other loop we say lead yourself. And the reason why we use an infinity loop is because it is a forever process of knowing yourself to lead yourself, to know yourself to lead yourself. And you don't ever really graduate from it. The school of self-awareness is a perpetual school that you have to continue to enter into, and you never graduate. It's probably like a nightmare for most of you, because like, I don't know about you guys, but when I got my last degree, I was like, woohoo, no more school. Yes. But this is a school that you never ever graduate from. And so that's really where we need to start with, is that, hey, do we have the humility to recognize this is a forever process? And unless you continue to have a posture to really want to know yourself and to then really want to change yourself, you will never become a leader worth following.
I think you're absolutely right. You really have to be curious enough, and then really, brave enough to start this journey, because it is never ending. And that can definitely seem pretty daunting. So how do we get started?
Well, the first part, we just talked about those two big concepts. Let me just break it down a little bit. Know yourself is the concept where, you're truly understanding your reality. I think that's the basis of what humility is all about, is you really care about the reality, both being honest with your weakness and your strength. And for that to happen, you need to actually desire quantitative and qualitative feedback, meaning you need to be able to ask some measurements and metrics of how you're doing with all the circles of your influence. That could be in your work life, in your home life, in your community, as well as ask for qualitative data, which is basically asking them to give them some more feedback and interview style, and allow them to actually engage in giving you some anecdotal evidence of how you have been towards them. And that gives you a good mirror to see your tendency. And the more and more we actually have that humble, hungry spirit to say, we really want to know what the feedback of what true feedback and the true data sets are in regards to our current leadership landscape, then we can be able to start to take the journey of self-leadership, taking what we are at in the benchmark of how we are relating with people and starting to lead ourselves in a different way. And when I say leadership, I think some people already kind of like check out and they say, hey, this is just only for those who are position leaders. I'm saying anytime you have influence, anytime you actually are working and you're connecting with people and you have any type of influential dynamics, you have leadership, right? You're either self-leading yourself, you're leading maybe within your family, you may be leading within your friends or your colleagues, or even if you have a position of leadership, that's great. But we all have a scope of leadership and influence.
Right. So really what you're saying is we have to kind of, put our feelings aside and kind of ask people for their feedback, and then really listen, which I know can be challenging to open ourselves up like that. And what you said is about tendencies. We know that tendencies don't really change. So, really, what you're saying is we're gathering more of just an awareness. And then from
Absolutely.
there, we can start really knowing ourselves.
Yeah, I like how you said that tendencies don't change. There is a hard wiring, a natural drivenness, and studies show that there is a pattern how you actually lean towards a certain way. Some of you love to give a lot of support. Some of you guys give a lot
Mm,
of challenge. Some of you have a lot of drive. Some of you process things externally. Some of you process things more internally. All of that are tendencies. They're not good or bad. It just happens sometimes. And as you have these natural tendencies, it will lead to specific patterns in your life.
mhm. I can think of examples for people who do all of those different things, right?
Mhm.
Process internal, process outwardly. Yeah, and so once we start examining our tendencies, then we can start. I know we can't change them, but how can we work towards, adjusting our actions?
Yeah, I think as you recognize kind of what your natural baseline or your drivers are, and you get that feedback from people and you
Mhm.
create that safe space. Here's the thing: if you don't create that safe space, guess what? You're not going to get feedback from people. Some
Not
people just,
authentic.
yeah, they won't either give it to you or they'll just kind of give you the sugar coated feedback because
Mm,
they know that you can't handle it. Right. And you wonder why sometimes people say they're not really telling you that is because you probably haven't created a safe space. And that's such an important thing
mm,
in these days. Creating that safe space, psychological safety, making sure every voice is heard is such an important thing as someone who needs to make right decisions. Everyone can make better decisions when you create the influx of that give and exchange of truth. And if you can't get that, you're not going to be able to make the right decisions. Now we talked about tendencies.
mhm,
After a while, what you are able to start to do is that you recognize it and you're able to audit and you start to be aware of it. You can start to see the patterns in your life.
mhm.
And if you can future pace and start to see how that would look like after a year or 2 years, and like, oh my gosh, I can totally see this pattern happening. It's formed already. Then you can make a decision like, oh my gosh, is this the future that I really want?
Mhm,
Is this what I want to continue to sustain in this relationship or my work?
mhm.
And I think at that point, then you can start to know the drivers of your tendencies that could lead to a certain pattern. And you can start to then make some calibrated actions that could change your path of your future.
Hmm. So, do you have an example that you can share with us that would help kind of help us put this into, a real life situation?
Absolutely. I know we talked a little bit more on just the concept and different components of know yourself to lead yourself. I'll give you an example, just more at home. You
Mhm,
know, I naturally love to make things better. I like to fix things. I like to bring constructive feedback to make me feel like I am maximizing my influence and maximizing my gifts and my strengths.
mhm,
And so I take that good intention and I start to work with my sons. Right, we're teaching them baseball and trying to have them swing and hit the ball. And for my
mhm,
firstborn, when I go into that mode and that coaching mode, I was like, hey son, you got to move your legs here and you got to position your arms here. And
mhm,
he's like, oh daddy, this is awesome. I'm growing at, oh, is this how you do it? And he loves that feedback and he likes that critique to making him better,
mhm,
and he thrives from that.
mhm.
However, I do the same exact tendency to my other son, and literally he is crying and
Oh.
weeping, and he's like, I never want to play baseball. And so, for one tendency that I'm actually leading and actually engaging my son is actually awesome and it's
Mhm,
really liberating for him. But for the other one, it actually is crushing. And so I realized, oh my gosh, if I keep fixing things little by little at a heart to serve and to love my second born, who is a little more soft spoken, it actually will crush him. So I had to realize, hey, it may have worked with my firstborn, but my second born, I had to change my patterns and lead
mhm,
my actions in a different way, which I had to do a lot more of affirmation and love and son,
mhm.
I love you, right? And I had to stop actually critiquing him for a bit until he felt this trust, and I was able to then have a different consequence where he actually was leaning into my relationship with him versus being pushed away.
Mhm. Wow, that's a great example, and so true, not just at home, but also, at work. As leaders, we have to be self-aware of our effect on others, but also, we have to really lead each person that we're with and we interact with in different ways. So,
Mhm.
I mean, we just took us to a whole nother level there, Abraham, but I really, uh, I really appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about reality, right? So we've got the the tendencies, the action, the consequences, and that simple thought of what is it like to be on the other side of me?
Yeah.
How can we
Yeah.
use that?
You know, if you start to, and I think that's the beginning place for everything, right? Is to really look and assess your reality. And anytime you don't like the consequences of your life, or anytime you don't like the current reality of your situation, that's where you just need more feedback loop. All
Mm,
right. We talked
okay.
about getting that quantitative and qualitative feedback. And if you can't get that data set and to really understand what clearly is your landscape of your terrain, of what you're leading yourself into, then guess what? You're not going to know enough information for you to lead yourself. And so it is this kind of circular process of
Hmm.
knowing your reality to your tendencies, going into understanding your patterns, changing your actions, and starting to have a new consequence. Hopefully that leads to more life in your work,
Hmm.
and just family and life in general, versus death and brokenness and destruction that
Right.
maybe you don't want to
And
live
chaos, of
out.
course,
Yeah,
and
chaos.
tears.
Yeah.
Right. Well, great. Thank you, Abram. You have given us so much to think about, and I really appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks for joining us today.